All right, so it's January 21st, and Christie, we're officially Tuesday podcast people.
Yes.
Monday's too crazy. I think we said that last week, but it has been a crazy week, and I figured today will be. I don't know if this will be a regular occurrence or not, but we're going to try it out. Today's going to be current events. Current events. We're going to talk about. Going to be a little more shooting off the cuff, but there's a lot going on in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, a whole lot, including the fact that I had to crawl out of bed to get into the office because I messed my back up pretty bad because I'm an old man. What do you think about that, Christy? So
I put
Christy's
his socks on
not
for
to,
him
yeah.
this morning.
Christy put my socks on this morning. Um,
Oh no, it's so sad, but for some reason it makes me laugh. Like I am so sorry that that's who I am. I've been that way my whole life. It's
Christy
not that
tends to bust
I
out in
do
laughter at people's calamities.
no. Not I don't laugh at people's calamity, but I do like the faces that you make and the you know sounds of like yeah, I just have to chuckle at that. But I don't but I will absolutely put your socks on for you and I love you.
Thank you. I appreciate you putting my socks on for me. I needed it. I did stretch out a little bit and took a prescription medication that was not prescribed to me for pain. So,
It's an anti-inflammatory. That's
no,
all it was.
no.
So nothing
Okay. Well,
cuckoo. But you were saying this you messed your back up. Jiu-jitsu last night was what you were,
yeah,
I
I was at
think.
the gym, and so I do Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. For those of you that don't know me, and just some, I'm 48 years old. A lot of people are talking at the screen that know me, including my dad. If you're watching this, Dad, I know you're saying it. You don't need to be doing Jiu Jitsu anymore, but it's what keeps me in shape. It's I've tried. It's funny just to reflect a little bit. You and I, not so much in our early years, but probably since our mid 30s, we've tried a lot of different workout routines and health regimens to keep ourselves healthy. If I'm going back far enough, do you remember we were living in Lexington and we were over at a student ministry at a church there? And I want to say there was a guy that visited the church there. I don't remember how we connected with him. He either visited one of our youth events or something. Younger guy who's going to Wake Forest University for exercise science, physics, whatever it is. And he came over our house and did a workout regimen with us. Do you remember that? African American guy, young guy, handsome, obviously buff.
It is not.
Yeah.
Was
Well,
I home? Maybe I was working.
no, you were there. We did it in our living room, which our house was tiny. It was this tiny little living room. He came over.
The
We
size
only
of this office, probably the living room was a little bigger than
a
this
little bigger
office,
than his
probably.
office. Yeah, it's crazy. But I rem- you
Man, it's
probably
like I
don't.
want to remember so
Well, you don't
badly.
remember because we only did it one time.
Okay.
We were so sore. I was so sore. And I recall like it was nothing, we were like light dumbbells and just simple basic exercise stuff that he was kind of coaching us to. Cause both you and I don't think you'd be offended me saying that we're, we were mostly very unathletic, still am very
Mm.
unathletic our whole lives.
Hmm.
So this guy came, we're probably in our early 30s. Cause if it were living in Lexington, you're talking,
We were 20, like, I think we moved to North Carolina when we were both like 25.
yeah. So we're talking late 20s, probably,
Mm.
maybe early 30, maybe 30 years old. But then, again, fell off the wagon. And then correct me if I'm wrong. I think the next time we attempted to do something consistent to exercise was P90X. Now we're living in
I
Davie County.
remember this.
And I got a
Oh,
hold of the
yes.
P90X series. For those of you that
Yes.
know,
But I didn't really do that though. I mean, if I
you did
did,
it a little
it
bit.
was a very tiny little nothing. You
Yeah.
were more consistent for sure.
Well, I did not make it through the whole thing though. If
But did we
anybody's
put it on
tried
the screen
P90X,
in our living room in that house,
we did it in our
right?
living room.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't have all the equipment. I'm trying to remember what they even had. There's like kettlebells
It's like,
maybe and stuff,
yeah.
a yoga mat and stuff. So, but it's mostly body weight stuff, push ups and
Mm-hmm.
squats and all that stuff.
Oh
And
my lord.
I remember, uh, I want to say I got through maybe half of it. We were journaling it all and everything. Christy did it a little bit with me, but didn't get as far. And man, it was brutal. It was so hard.
I just think of how sore we are after we work out and how sore you are today.
But it's a
I'm
different
really
kind of
sorry
sore.
about that though. I really am sorry about that. Just to go back. I'm really not a
No, I know,
not
I
an
know.
awful
Been
person.
married to you long enough to know.
I
Yeah.
just laugh sometimes. Well,
No, it's
because
I get it. I get it.
but and then I remember working at the Chamber of Commerce in Winston-Salem and we signed up for this. Oh, what was it? Groupon?
So there was a Groupon. I don't even know if Groupon still exists. Yeah, so that's the
I think
next
it does.
sequence. We're suckers for good deals, and so we had the Groupon subscription in our email inbox or however they did it back then. And a Groupon came out for CrossFit boot camp, and we are like, "Oh, this sounds great." It was cheap too, because CrossFit. Those of you that don't know, it's a very
Yeah.
expensive kind of group training exercise
Mhm.
program, but it's very hardcore. Um, but a lot of gyms do these boot camps to get people in the door. But normally, like a CrossFit gym, I want to say it was like $100 plus a month per
And
person. It's very
yeah,
expensive.
that's expensive.
Yeah.
But back then, too, for us financially, that would have been a
But I want to say the Groupon was like 30 or $40 for,
for it was like 8 weeks,
yeah, it
12
was like
weeks.
a
It was
2 month, what they called
mm,
a boot camp.
and it was I think it was 2 times a week. If I'm not
Oh, at least.
I
Yeah.
think it was, if I'm not mistaken,
It
because I
might've
know
been
it
3.
was like Saturdays. There was one day, there was 2 day no, I think it was 3
I
because
think
I
it was
think it was
3.
Saturday mornings,
Yeah.
and then I remember the reason why I say this is because, working at the chamber, I would sometimes walk
Right.
to the boot camp,
Right downtown.
gym.
It was, yeah,
Yeah.
it was right nearby her
Yeah.
office downtown Winston-Salem.
Oh
Yeah.
my goodness.
Yeah.
Leaving work and going there. Oh,
But we did that. So we did the full, whatever it was, 8 weeks.
I hated the running. The running, I think, was like the most
Running was
miserable
bad.
because they wear you
They called it a warm up,
out.
but if you're out
They
of
wear
shape
you
as we
out.
were, you were wore out before the workout
Yeah, and then
started.
you're supposed to be doing like these box jumps. Can you
Yeah.
believe it? We used I used to do box jumps. Is that
You
what
could
they're
do it
called?
again. Yeah, they're called box jumps.
Oh my word.
You did good.
Wow.
I
I
remember I
remember
talk about
feeling like,
this.
"Woo, I'm in shape after this." I
I
felt so
talk
good
about
about
this in
myself.
jujitsu often. I think one of the hardest workouts I've ever done in my life was in one of those boot camps. By the way, I want to say I did 3 of the boot camps. You did too.
I think I did t Are you saying I did 2 boot camps or
I
I
think you
did
did
as well?
2, and the third one I can't remember if I just did
Yeah.
it by
I
myself
think I
or
kind of like
you had
I
enough.
tapped out,
You had enough.
but I was
Which
having
it was
some other
intense.
health issues.
That's true.
I was struggling through
That's
some other
true.
health issues that
Yep.
I couldn't it was very hard to push through.
But I remember the hardest workout. It's so hilarious. And I know people are just loving hearing about Dan and Christie working out, but we'll move on, I promise. um, we came in and this instructor, I would love to meet her today. There was this instructor. She was the sweetest girl, lady, probably in her mid 20s, clearly like a exercise science major of some kind, personal trainer. And she had the softest, sweetest tone, but yet intense.
Mhm.
She
Mhm.
knew how to motivate you.
Yeah.
And
I remember
I
this.
remember she was leading the class that day, and we came in. I want to say it was a Saturday morning class, which was like really early, which is, for us was hard as in of itself. But she came in, and normally we did a warm up. I think it was probably a short run or something like that. We came in, she's like, "All right," it was
A whole
indoors.
block. We had to run around the
Run around
whole
the block.
block.
Yeah,
It's like
which
not even like, jog in place
yeah,
for
but for my
2
runner
seconds.
friends, who running marathons every morning, like
Oh,
we're talking, a a block or two laps around a
it's just
block
too much
would
for
have
me
been a
at the
quarter
time.
mile or something. It was silly. But anyways, we were warmed up. We came into and she was like, "All right, everybody lay down on the ground, flat on your back." And then she was like, "No, actually, get up. Everybody get up." So everybody gets up. And by the way, the classes, these boot camp class were a good mix of people.
So full too.
They were full. There were 20, 30 people, but you had older people, you
Yeah.
had men, women, a couple teenagers that were in good shape. But for the most part, it was a big cross section of people, overweight, on skinny, all kinds of people. So she's like, lay down, get up. She doesn't. She's like, no, never mind, lay down. So she does that like 4 or 5 times, maybe not 4 or 5, like 3 times, and then she finally relents and looks at it. She's like, actually, everybody do that 100 times.
Mhm,
Start flat on your back
mhm,
and get up.
mhm. Is that burpees or no?
No, it wasn't burp. It was
Oh, okay.
literally get up off the ground any way you want. Do it
Yeah,
100 times. And everybody, if you've never tried something like that, you're probably like, oh, no big deal.
yeah.
But it was I think it was the hardest work. I remember
Mm,
you at by the end, you were
mm,
peeling yourself off the ground.
mm.
It was so hard.
I remember my experience with that lady is that we were doing push-ups,
Yeah.
and she was, she walks around, and it's a relatively big facility, so she'd be
Mhm.
kind of over on the other far side of the place, and I would be like seeing what I could get away with, like, okay,
Sneaking in
I'm
some.
not gonna do the push-ups here.
Yeah.
Everybody's like 15, 16, and I'm just laying down 17,
Yeah.
18, 19, not really doing anything. And then she kind of, when I saw her looking, I'm like, back to it. And but I kind of collapsed. It was like too much. And in that moment, and she walked over and she leaned down and she looked at me and she goes, three, two,
2.
one.
Yeah.
And I looked at her like, she's
What's
like,
gonna happen after she says
again,
1?
again, get back to it. And I was just like, oh, I
Good
was
on
afraid of
her.
those people.
She was good.
I think I was kind of afraid of those people. I
Well,
mean,
she
in a
was
good
she
way.
was physically imposing, let's just say that.
Yes.
She was tall and
Oh, so fit.
yeah, fit.
Yeah. And then what is this workout of the day? The WOD? Is that
WOD,
what it's?
yeah,
They would have that listed on the wall,
yeah.
and
But that
it's
was
supposed
for
to
the
be
people.
inspiring too, I think, and
Well, no, that
motivating.
was so we were into boot camp, which was supposed to be like an entry boot camp into CrossFit to get you into
Mm.
decent enough shape so that you
Oh
can do
yeah, to
CrossFit.
do the
And the third
workouts.
class, the third boot camp I did, actually it wasn't even a boot camp. It was the proper entry into CrossFit. And it was at a different gym, if you remember, it was in Clemens that we
Oh yeah,
did.
I do.
And that's when you actually start doing Olympic lifting with barbells and stuff.
Oh
But that
yeah.
was a whole nother level of difficult. That's oh, I got hurt. I surprise. And this is in my 30s. But yeah, anyway. So again, I don't want to talk about working out so long. But after that, I got out of shape terribly. And then we were going through a really stressful time in life. And Christy knew I've always been into watching and interested in jujitsu and mixed martial arts. And a gym opened up right near our house. And so Christy literally drove me there and said, "You're joining." And the rest is history. I fell in love with jujitsu. I've been doing it for 11 years and
Mm-hmm.
it's hard on your body for sure. But it's for me, it's an intellectual pursuit as much as a physical pursuit.
Mm-hmm.
And it, it's so motivating because there's progression. You're constantly testing yourself against other people. And so more the reason why I do it, I guess what I'm saying is because I fell in love with it and it's accountability. Shout out to our last episode if you haven't heard it.
Mm-hmm.
It's personal accountability with the group of people you work out with.
Yeah.
But I hurt my back pretty bad.
Yeah.
So I'll be fine. I need some time to rest and we'll see. Maybe I'll be back in the gym this week. Who knows?
Yeah. Usually you push yourself.
Yeah, you got it.
I
There's
think
to a
you
certain
shouldn't.
extent.
Sometimes I'm like, honey, you're just gonna hurt. You're gonna further injure yourself, and you're just
Well,
like, no, I need to go.
I've been doing it long enough to where I know when I'm hurt how to protect myself. And I know, and this is when we could start transitioning out, to more relevant topics for our general audience. But this is where like momentum is so important, especially
Mm,
later in life. Not just physical exercise, but everything. Any good habit, for me anyway. Habits, good habits especially, are so hard to develop. And I guess part of it is my just innate fear of losing those habits. The longer breaks I take and lose my routine, I'm afraid I'm going to lose
hmm.
the
You
good
talk
habit.
about like muscle mass too. You worry about that.
Yeah, hey, older you get, especially men, I guess women too. Everybody, you just lose so much muscle mass. But anyways, yeah. So my son, our son, he does jujitsu with me, and uh, I think most days he likes it. Most days he really enjoys it. But what he did his first competition this
On
past
Saturday.
weekend on Saturday, yeah, which I was really proud of him.
Yeah.
Um, Tough going. He did really really well, but he did lose both matches. But man, it was just so rewarding to see him compete. And if somebody wants to bribe me, I've got videos I can share with you if you reach out to me. But I was coaching him, obviously, and I was losing my mind coaching him. I
Mm-hmm.
was screaming like a maniac,
Mm-hmm.
instructions, and it comes through in the video. A lot of people commented, but it was really special just to be there and coach him and see him push through fear and anxiety,
Adversity. Yeah.
adversity. He had a really tough opponent. Again, did really well, but really tough
Mm-hmm.
opponent. Um, but man, it just reminded me of why especially for our kids, I just feel so passionate about not just jujitsu. That's just so our son does jujitsu and soccer. He loves soccer probably
Mhm.
more than
Well, he did
jujitsu.
both of those last night.
He did both last
Mhm.
night, yeah, but, the value of that, life value, dealing with adversity, winning, losing, being gracious, being resilient. Life is not always gonna be a win. Uh, Anybody who's lived more than 2 years knows that sometimes it's more a loss, and how do you deal with losses than wins? And so, I find so much value in our kids doing something like that.
Mhm. Being in a team sport.
Well, team and individual. Sometimes
Mhm.
I think, yeah, it's really interesting. I've thought about this a lot because team sports teach you almost a whole different set of skills.
Mhm.
Obviously, working together and depending on your team,
Mhm.
being, again, shout out last week, being accountable to your team,
Mhm.
showing up. How many times did our son say, "My team stinks.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go. I'm not going to
Yeah.
go show up for this game. We lost too bad last week." And
Yeah.
my message always is, no, you made a commitment
Mhm.
to your team, and you need to be accountable to that, to your teammates.
Mhm.
They need you there.
Mhm.
So, there's so many good lessons, but individual sports, um, I feel like there's so much there too, because you can't, when you come up short,
Can't blame anyone else.
no,
Yeah.
you can't blame anybody else. It's on you. So I feel like with individual sports, individual pursuits, it doesn't have to be sports, So, our daughter, she does a lot of intellectual sports. So she's a Bible quizzer, which is a team sport and an individual sport in a sense too. But specifically with individual sports, I feel like the ups and downs are more extreme. So when you lose, it's
Mm.
hard. There's nobody to blame.
Mhm.
Oftentimes when our son loses a soccer match, he'll, oh, my team
Yeah,
stinks.
that goalkeeper
Yeah.
really let the ball through. I'm
Oh,
like,
this
well, where
happened.
were
So
you?
and
Did
so
you help
wasn't
defend?
there, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And he even did that last night. They lost their game
Yeah.
yesterday. And I was like,
Pretty bad loss.
and he said, I guess there was, they got shut out. They scored none. I'm like, oh, well, you didn't score any goals. So it's partly your fault.
Mhm.
But
That's
anyways,
hard.
individual sports. But then the ups when you win, there's nothing like it. It's all on you. You did that.
Yeah. I played soccer last winter,
Yeah.
8 weeks, and it was co-ed.
Hmm.
And
Adult soccer. Yep.
yeah, indoor, of
Hmm.
course, obviously it was winter. And I was not in shape. You and also my brother. You guys were like, you need to be like running like 2 miles or something
I
like that
was genuinely worried for her health.
before you just jump in and join an
Yes.
adult league. And I'm like, I'm fine. I can do this, the Stevens thing. I'm fine. I
No.
can do it. I can do anything.
Hmm.
And so I didn't really prepare much at all. At all. Probably didn't prepare.
No, you didn't prepare at all,
Mm-mm. And I just got out there.
but you did great.
I felt like my heart was like, I could hear my heart beating in my ears. I felt like my head was going to just like pop off of my body. And it was the most rewarding thing
Hmm.
I've ever done.
I
These
love that.
huge guys, though, because like I'm not tall. Am I tall? I'm kind of just average,
You're
right?
average. Yeah.
So these big dudes come,
Oh,
at me.
my son informed me of new youth slang. You're not average, you're mid.
Oh, okay.
He said I
Mid.
was mid last night.
In your like jujitsu skills or?
No, whole different topic. Never
Okay.
mind.
Okay. All right. Anyways, I just could say about the team sport, I loved that so much. I just showed up, complete strangers, and they like are, we introduce ourselves. There's no coach, obviously. We just are all adults, right? So,
Yeah.
um,
I think you
it was
enjoyed the
so
social aspect
fun.
probably
I
more than
loved
anything.
it.
Yeah. I,
Yeah, and I even told the guy, they're like, okay, so what do you play? What part of the field do you play or whatever? And I was like, um, anything. I said, but here's the deal about me. You need to know. I'm not so interested in winning
keep talking.
as I am in, getting some good exercise, but also in, oh, also in getting good exercise, but like I'm going to defend the goal. So I was like, I'm not so.
All right, we're back.
All right.
So sorry about the technical difficulties 2 weeks in a row, but we're back. You were talking. Uh,
Yeah. I was just saying that they asked what position I preferred to play, and I'm like, "Oh, I'll just be all over the place, but I'm a really good defender." Like, I don't you're I said, "You're gonna learn about me. I don't really care about winning. I'm here to get really good exercise and just defend the goal. And so I said, I will be on top of people. Like I am all in. And I was
And the
all
guys,
over.
they were afraid to probably go hard against you because you're a woman and you're
Mhm.
smaller. So
Yeah, I definitely use that to my
hey,
advantage
good
too.
for
Like
good on you.
I would run right into these big guys and be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry," but I wasn't because I totally took the ball away from them, but they were kind of like, hands off. It was good. I mean, I definitely got hurt a couple times, but in the end, I was like, just to show up in these complete strangers.
Yeah,
They know my name now. Then every week I'm there, they're like, "Hey, Christy, you come in for me." Or like I felt needed. It sounds so silly, but I felt wanted.
it's
And
all
I'm not
good.
that person. Like my love language is not like words of affirmation or any of that kind of stuff. I don't need pats on the back, but it just felt like so good that they were like, "You come in," and then or if I kick the ball really. And by the way, indoor soccer, the balls are heavier.
I
Oh,
get.
it's
I heard
harder to
that.
kick the ball.
Yeah,
It's not harder to kick the ball, but it's harder to make the ball go really far.
I guess that's the point, right? Because it's a small field, and so
Yes.
yeah,
But, when they would say, "Great kick," or "Good pass," I'm like,
you were loving those
"Hey, hey,
words of
yeah, wow, I
affirmation.
didn't know that appreciated that so
I
much."
I just think, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of value even in later in life. Yeah, it's there's just a lot. So the Bible says, and a lot of people use this to me, they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot when they say this. Some people that don't exercise or don't believe in exercise or organized sports, which my parents did not either growing up. So I did no organized sports. We went outside, played a lot, and obviously ran and played soccer
Mhm,
amongst friends and all that. But my parents, I wouldn't say we ever had a conversation that we were not allowed to play organized sports, but I think I alluded to this in one of our previous episodes. So, my parents were immigrants from the former Yugoslavia, and specifically growing up in the 50s and 60s when there was a communist dictator, and it was during the Cold War, and Yugoslavia was very much aligned to the Soviet Union. So, all that to say, my family were uh, an ethnic minority group, and they were not communists. They were not part of the Communist Party. They were not part of the religion that the Communist Party endorsed. The Eastern Orthodox or Serbian Orthodox, whatever they call it today. All that to say, they came to the U.S. in the late '60s and early '70s. In my dad's case, and they raised us as they only knew how, and their mentality of organized sports were, well, that's what like the state sanctioned organized sports. That's where they indoctrinate youth and communities and all that. So inherently, I grew up doing no organized sports. I mean, it was like nothing for me. But all that to say, as I grown up in the U.S., I often look back in my childhood and say, not that it's a hole. I don't want to say that. It's kind of dramatic, a gap in my upbringing, but I can definitely see the impact of not participating in that in my childhood.
mhm,
I don't know about you. Growing up, you weren't
mhm.
really involved too much either.
No, I mean, just like at school,
Yeah.
we would, play,
Yeah.
but I think that I find that there's great value for our kids in participating in team sports. We talked about individual sports as well. One of the things that I think is even more valuable, probably, than just them being on a team with other individuals is the disciplines
Yeah.
for like athleticism that it builds into their lives.
100%. Yeah, totally.
So Brentley's not afraid of exercise.
Yeah.
Our son is not afraid of exercise.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I call that building an athletic base, and I to this day, again, I'm older, and I can tell in my body. It's so funny because people look at me, "Oh, you're looking thin and in shape," but I really think I need to talk to somebody who understands this from a scientific perspective, but I think when you grew up as a child doing that, you build some kind of foundation in your body and
Mhm.
endurance and strength and all that. And I did not
Mhm.
have it. So to this day, I struggle with that. It's, with
Mhm.
strength and endurance. So
Mhm.
it's interesting. All right. So let's move on. It's supposed to be a current events episode. We talked too much about that.
About exercise.
So election season is finally over. And yesterday was inauguration day. Don't worry, we're not going to get all political on everybody, but I thought it was worth just kind of talking about. First of all, I don't remember ever. And I'm sure every generation says this, but just the craziness of politics these days, how divisive it is and how intense those divisions are. I've never seen it like that. I've never seen it like this. And, you know, growing up, it was always divisive. Politics is politics. But the fact that these days, even within a given micro community, you can see division within family units, within church communities, within job, offices and all that. I feel like growing up younger, there was if you lived in a certain part of the country, you went to a church within a family, everybody pretty much believed the same way. But these days, it's just like, it's crazy.
Mm.
It's unbelievable. I mean, within any, you name it, you build how small or large a community is, there's going to be people that, you know, if you let them out of the cage, they're going to go at it politically. It's crazy to
Mm.
me. It's unbelievable. What do you think that is? I mean, why are people like this? What's changed?
That's a loaded
I
question.
know. Yeah. It's a
I
little rhetorical,
well,
but
so I will say, as you're talking about this, I'm thinking of, being younger in different church groups because
yeah.
we were churchgoers. I guess it would make sense that those communities would believe similarly,
But that's not the case anymore, though.
No, right. I'm saying
I guess that's my
I d
point.
yeah, I don't yeah, I don't know. I think is it possible that we could feel freer in our speech today than we did back then? That's my question because we're fighting for freedom of speech right now, it feels like, but it seems like based on what you've just talked about, like we all what we believed,
Mhm.
our families believed or whatever while we were growing up, depending on,
So you're
elections and
saying you're saying by virtue of people talking more freely, we're discovering divisions that were always there?
I th yes, I believe that
That's
there's a
interesting.
good possibility of that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. I remember, it's interesting because I thought about this a couple weeks ago. I was thinking about this, and growing up, I was trying to think if I recall ever as a child a political debate around the family table with family,
Yeah, I
and I can only
don't.
think of one.
Oh, okay.
I could think of one, and it'll make sense. You know him; he's deceased now. But I had an uncle who was very opinionated and a little contentious. Let's call it that
Mm,
way.
okay.
And I think it's safe to say, growing up, my family were all Republicans and very conservative. And it was it was a dinner that we were having. I don't remember who all was there, but this uncle was there, and politics came up. I was really young. I'd probably been, I don't know, preteen for sure. But I remember this conversation because it got heated. That's what stuck in my head.
Mm.
Because this uncle announced in this conversation that he was a Democrat.
Mm,
And everybody's like, "What? Are you kidding me?" That I guess that goes prove my point. Back then, this would have probably been in the, early to mid 80s. Um, the fact that there was an extended family member that didn't have the same political affiliation was shocking to everybody.
mhm,
And these days, that's almost expected, right?
mm,
Even within a brother and
mm,
sister,
mm.
husband and wives. It's something I know people
Yeah.
whose wives are completely different political
Mhm.
philosophy than
Yeah.
the husband. So,
I think that I think there's beauty in that.
100%. I'm all
Yeah.
for that. I guess what
Mhm,
I don't like though is people afraid to talk about their differences or are encouraged not to. What's the saying? I don't know if this is just like in an office environment, but they often say don't talk politics and religion, right? Just because they're so
mm,
contentious, right?
mm.
I hate that.
Is it bad to say don't ask, don't tell? Because that's what I keep thinking of.
Yeah, well, that's
I mean,
that's the same spirit of don't talk
yeah.
politics and religion. But I wish I guess I understand that because that's people just trying to keep peace. In some places you have to, right? In an office, you're trying to get people to work together, not kill each other. So I get the principle behind it, but at the same time, I feel like there's a lot of collateral damage when we do that. When certainly people that are friends and family, when
Mhm,
we can't talk about our political beliefs, what's the downstream effect of that? Then we're all just going to keep quiet about our political beliefs and not talk about it. I don't know that that's healthy. That isn't because what happens is then we're
mm,
stuck in our echo chambers where we either know we're going to be, let's say we go to an event that we know everybody, believes like we do, or worse yet, you just are stuck in your own head in the echo chamber of your brain where you're just reiterating your ideas and how correct you are. Both are really bad. I feel like I find so much value in discussing things with people that don't believe like I do.
Yeah. The divisiveness,
Mhm.
I think, comes from ego. So you should be able to believe the way that you believe,
Yeah,
and you should be able to tell me how you believe,
right.
and I should be able to accept how you believe and know that how I believe is different.
Mhm.
I should be able to tell you how I believe and walk away loving each other, accepting each other. But what happens is I think our ego gets involved. So I was saying, I think that ego plays a big part, and not being able to just be okay with everyone else's decisions.
Yeah.
We don't have to control everybody's way of thinking and everyone's actions. We're just I don't know how we've gotten to that point where I mean, the variety of people in the world is really what makes it so special. If everyone was like me,
Yeah.
I mean, in moments I could be like, I wish they would do it this way. I wish that person would do it this way. Or and it's because to me that makes sense. But in their brain, it doesn't make sense to do it that way. And I think we need to be open to accepting all different types of belief systems. There's what's wrong with that? I don't understand what's so wrong with that. And don't I don't want to get too passionate about this, but it is very frustrating
Yeah.
actually that we can't you talked about talking about the inauguration yesterday and I'm like,
Christie was like, "Let's not
don't
do
do
that."
that. Let's not do that. That's so polarizing and so but why?
No, it shouldn't be. And, um, I just to kinda touch on what you were saying, I think that, people sometimes they just need to adjust their expectations, right? First of all, it comes out of place of ignorance to even think that everybody would believe like you do. Even if you're the most, left or right person that lines up, to the political parties of the United States, even then you should expect if you talk to some other person that they're going to have A, different priorities than you, and B, they probably will have different beliefs than you, right? So I think it's just a matter of adjusting your expectations, accepting people's differences of opinions, and you can even feel they're wrong when you talk to them, but still just be compassionate and caring and not get upset. And I think that's where it is. People just get worked up and upset when people don't agree because, oh, you're wrong. You're what's wrong with the country, and this and that or the other. But that needs to go away. I've completely abandoned political affiliations. I'm a registered independent, and um, I tend to have some views that line with the left and some views that line with the right. And so in terms of the inauguration, both of us, and we won't have to go into what it was, but we were watching it yesterday. It was interesting. There's a lot of interesting things I kind of want to touch on, but we were looking at some things that were being said, and we're like cringy. We're like, oh,
Yeah.
I wish they didn't do that. I wish he didn't say that. And then at the other times, I'm looking at, you know, the person that I didn't vote for, and they're like, oh, that was really good, really honorable.
Mhm.
So, um, I think, just from that kind of perspective, it's interesting to me to think about why that is and how we get better. How do I contribute in the people that I talk to? Um,
Can I say one of the things
yeah.
that I'm working with um our kids on is I can say something
Hmm.
and you cannot agree with it
Yeah.
and you can sit with it.
Accept it,
Like
receive it.
you just don't have to be combative. You don't just have to say, "Well, no, my opinion is this,"
Yeah.
or this kind of argumentative thing,
Yeah.
like why do we have to express our opinion if someone doesn't ask us for our opinion sometimes? Like
Yeah.
I think that's part of it. Somebody could tell me a whole bunch of stuff that I would just not agree with at all. And I will even say sometimes, would you want to know how I feel about that or not?
Yeah.
And if they say, sure, yes, then I'll share, but not in a way to shame or demean, but to say, this is just my perspective. And we walk away and we're friends. And
And I think there's little ways that you can use just general common sense manners in those kind of conversations. If somebody's talking to you about things you don't understand, and let's say politics, and they're representing a perspective that you completely disagree with, what you can say is, I really appreciate your perspective.
Yep.
Appreciate doesn't mean agree, just means that you've heard them. You appreciate that you're taking into account that they feel this way, that they believe this way, and I'm hearing you. But then you can follow that with your perspective, right? And so I think just by saying something like that, it's a simple, practical way where you can facilitate common ground and conversation. And I think that's the biggest thing that's lacking. I feel like we went through so many years, and hopefully it's going to change, but I don't know. Where people, they're just not talking. If they don't agree, it's going back to this thing: don't talk religion and politics. And we're focusing on politics here, but religion is another thing. We can really spend another hour. Not today, but we could spend an hour talking about how people from different diverse religious perspectives don't talk. I grew up Pentecostal, and oftentimes, people even in the religious spectrum, a Baptist person, I would, if I found out somebody's Baptist, I'm not talking to them about God and about their religious tradition. Growing up, now I do.
Yeah.
But growing up, it's almost like, oh, they're a completely different tribe. Don't talk to them, right? Which is silly, right? I mean, we as Pentecostals have so much to learn from different people, right? From Catholics and Presbyterians and Methodists and Baptists and Islam and Buddhism and all that. Let's have a conversation. Doesn't mean we're accepting it. I'm not
Well,
going all the Pope on here who's saying all roads lead to heaven kind of philosophy, but we can talk. We can
mm,
acknowledge their perspective.
well, I think you said that it's not saying that you're accepting it. I think you can accept it and not apply it.
Yes.
So, and that
I
doesn't
would call
mean,
that appreciating it, right? Like,
yeah.
I appreciate that. So if somebody's telling you, their upbringing, and I had this, so I work in IT. I have worked in IT for 26 years. So I work with a lot of people from India, of which most are Hindu. So I've had a lot of conversations. Actually, I had an individual who I hired who worked for me, lived in India, and he often enjoyed talking about his Hindu tradition and his belief system,
Different holidays,
different
different
holidays.
spices, different things that they would use.
He would talk to me about a guru and, all this stuff. And oftentimes I don't know that I said I appreciate respect, but I would have that attitude. And in turn, it opened him up to listen to and receive my perspective. And, I think that's what the world needs more of, both in religion and politics, is just people who are willing to appreciate somebody else's perspective.
Going back to what we said last week about being image bearers, regardless of your belief system, we are made in the image of God. And so to say, and I'm not condemning this, but
Yeah.
you mentioned this earlier. It is a way that we used to believe, though. I think they're Baptist or they're this or they're that. And so I don't know why it was, kind of like a divide there. Like, let's not talk, at least not talk religion. But the thing is that if we all
Right.
truly
Like I
believe,
interrupt, I think you hit on it earlier. It's ego. It's pride. We're right,
there,
they're wrong.
but there could be fear too.
Yeah,
There could be fear of,
could be.
like, okay, so like from a parent's perspective,
Mhm.
if they start talking to them, they might have more questions. I don't know that I can answer those questions. I mean, there
And
could just be this
Christie.
whole thing
Yeah, yeah.
connected to that possibly too. But I guess I'm just saying is like, if we, as Pentecostal, if we believe that we are all part of the body of Christ and that we're all like the children of God, then those divides just shouldn't.
Should be, yeah.
I mean, they're there. We know that there are different belief systems, and that way that can be dividing, but it shouldn't be. It shouldn't keep us from seeking to learn more about each other and to understand each other and to accept other people's belief systems.
Right.
There's just nothing wrong with that. And how better do we truly reveal the love of God?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that goes back to, diversity of perspective and thought, and there's a lot of reasons why people do that. I think that the obvious thing is it's not necessarily the best way to live, right? You should be open to to listening and learning from all people.
Mhm. One of the things about the inauguration that I appreciated that I was telling you earlier, it's for as long as I can remember, it's been outdoors.
I think always. Did they say that it was the
I feel
first
like
time
it
ever?
no, I feel like it had been indoors before,
I'm gonna
but
Google it while you're talking.
the acoustics is one of the it's a silly thing, but I just loved and I'm sure it was even being there was would have been even more, like, amazing just to hear the acoustics, but, um, I thought that was awesome. I love that they were singing Glory Hallelujah.
That was cool.
I'm like, "What in the world? This is, like, such a spiritual thing." Um,
It was indoors.
it would
Ronald Reagan,
okay.
1985.
Okay, that's what I thought I heard one other. So, just it felt like a returning to the roots or the
Tradition.
foundation, tradition of our country and God we trust. Just hearing those songs is what like that was probably my most like this is amazing. The feeling that came over me like while watching that.
If I could push back a little, 'cause I definitely felt that way from a personal perspective because I'm a Christian. But one of the things that I wouldn't say cringe, but it worried me a little bit is, if you remember the benediction, the closing prayer, they had, I think, a Jewish rabbi come up, then they had an evangelical African American preacher come up, and then a Catholic or something, one of the Orthodox religions, a priest come up and do a benediction. And I thought they'd left out Islam. And I get it. From a
Uh,
personal perspective, I would have probably as well, right? Because, for a lot of reasons that are obvious and some maybe not obvious, but we won't go into. But, what triggered me when triggered is, I don't want to say triggered, what caught my attention and made me think was that how are all the Americans that follow Islam going to feel about that? They're going to feel left out. Are they going to feel somewhat radicalized by it and alienated is the right way? So again, in the spirit of what was said, and there was a time in my life where I probably would have been like, no way, you shouldn't have an imam or whatever they call them up there doing a prayer, but um, it was just notable that he
mm,
left it out. So while I'm listening to those songs and all that, I'm thinking, there was definitely attention to cater to, the Christian base of President Trump's party. But, how all those people that are not, that don't identify with that, how did they feel is what I was thinking. You know what I mean?
mm, I do. And I feel like I hear what you're saying, and in the spirit of being inclusive.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
I hear that. But what I'm saying is going back to the traditions of our forefathers.
I get it. But the
And
traditions
then
of our forefathers were to separate church and state too. So that's why they left.
high five. I
That's
got
why they left Europe in the first place, right? It's because back in the British Empire, the monarchy had a distinct political connection to the church, and hence the corruption of the church
mm,
that I think we talked about last week. Um, and so a big part of why the people left in the first place were to get away from that. And that's why their forefathers wrote it into the documents of the creation of our Constitution is we should not have a government that has a formal tie to the church.
so, like, our currency saying, "In God we trust."
Yeah. Not against that. Well, because God is and again, this is coming from the perspective of somebody who is a Christian, right? Who's in the ministry, grew up his whole life. I grew up sleeping under the pew, right? So, but at the same time, I do see the value of separation of church and state. I don't a government involved in the church. No,
Involved in keeping the freedoms of
keep the church free. Yeah,
religion.
keep religion free, but that you got to take the good and bad with that.
Mm.
That's my point, right? When the government's duty is to keep religion free. So to me, that should mean keep your hands off. And when you start including it,
Mm.
it feels less hands off, is what I'm saying.
But are so do the people in our government not they're not able to choose a belief system religiously that they would be okay with going with? So
Yeah.
let's
No,
say
they should be able to. Yeah.
okay, so then in that spirit, then
Agreed.
we should be totally okay with that. And so like if we have a president one day who is of the Muslim faith,
Right.
then they could choose how they want their inauguration to go, and then we should all be accepting of that then
I
based on
completely
what we've
agree.
just talked about.
I completely agree. And again, I would say that, if it was me in the shoes, I got elected president, not a job that I'd ever want, but if I got elected president, I probably would have, I don't know, I would even have a Jewish rabbi up there, right? I would, it probably, I guess that's what I probably would prefer. Just focus on your religious tradition, right? The fact that there was, and I don't want to hone in on this too much. It's just something interesting that I noted. But like the fact that they picked three and left out others, I just thought, "Hmm, interesting." Other thing I noticed, as contentious as the election season was, I've got to give credit to the Biden administration. Like they seemed very gracious. They seemed exceptionally composed, poised. I got to give, President Biden, Kamala Harris, um, yeah, all of them, a lot of credit, right? They just, I feel like they went through the inauguration, you know, first class. I really do. I tip my hat to them. Yeah, I think that was really, really good. And, I know there was a lot of uh fear and somewhat, amplified rhetoric around, the transfer of power. And I know the President Biden specifically was passionate about making sure to reaffirm to the public that this is part of democracy and all that. So I guess what I'm saying is I give him a lot of credit. Hats off. I don't agree with a lot of what he did during his administration, but the way he handed power over and the way he just handled himself, I think was pretty commendable.
Yeah, I've been saying I wanna write him a letter for a few months now. I need to do that. I don't know that he would read it, but, um, yeah, I feel like my heart goes out to him a little bit, you know? I mean,
Tough
I know
place. Yeah.
I mean, it's tough decisions,
Yeah.
that were made and, I don't know.
Yeah. No, for
I
sure.
I feel I feel kinda bad for him a little bit,
He is up in age. So, there's no denying that he's struggling with decline. I think everybody at this point that's no longer taboo to say, but um, I think that's what makes it personal to me. And if I can be, just so transparent, I didn't like the digs that were being taken at him right in front of his face. I
well,
I felt like that was bad taste.
I
You
agree.
know,
I
it's done,
agree with
right? Let's move forward.
that.
Like, why are you digging at him? He's right there,
Yeah.
and
And this goes back to we don't have to agree with
yeah,
everything that everyone does, but we can keep our mouth shut about it.
that's right.
We have that. We're supposed to all have that superpower of self-control.
When you know specifically what you're about to say is going to be hurtful, shut your mouth. Like it's just there's no value in that, right? The election is over, right? Which again, politicians be politicians, but so you had a last topic. Why don't you bring up the last topic
Okay.
and we'll close out with this.
So this is a surprise topic.
That's what we said. We're gonna do surprise topics here. I was gonna do surprise topic, but I'm deferring that.
Yeah, okay. So this is totally
Don't laugh, but I gotta adjust my chair. My back hurts really bad.
oh, honey. Okay. The so I'm trying to read the Bible every day.
Hmm.
And so in Genesis it's talking about
You're doing a cover to cover kind of Bible reading plan.
yes. So it's cover to cover, but it does break it up. Like I'm not going to go
It's not sequential.
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so today's reading was about Jacob and Esau and Rebecca and Isaac. Okay, so Isaac is older, eyes are dim, nearing death, says to his son, "Please go find some food for me.
Hmm.
Make me something to eat, whatever." Okay, so that I might enjoy that. So Esau goes out and he's out hunting. Jacob comes in. Rebecca goes, "Hey, you go find food so that you can get the blessing." And I'm having a little bit of a hard time, honestly,
With Rebecca?
with Rebecca because I feel like I've given Esau a bad rep
Yeah.
all this time,
Yeah.
and um I feel like I felt like Esau was like the bad guy because he sought to kill Jacob, right?
Mm,
Okay. I feel like Rebecca totally set this up. Like she was the deceiver.
okay. So I
And I'm
this
like
is
kind of
really interesting.
I'm getting like messed up about this right now. As I was reading, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like Rebecca went behind her husband's back, number one. No, she didn't.
Well, go ahead, finish your thought.
Okay, maybe I'm wrong.
No, I think you're right. You're onto something, but there's an important thing to consider.
Okay. I just think that that's deceitful. I think she should I don't I don't know. It just right now it's bothering me.
Bothering you.
Isn't that
Well,
crazy?
maybe I'll help you with the perspective.
Okay, give me some perspective then.
Um, so before I go into my reaction to that, and by the way, that is interesting. I never thought of that, but it immediately, when you were talking about that, I immediately went to another story in the Bible, which then I was like, okay, which brings up this fact.
Okay, so before you go there,
Yeah.
Rebecca said to Jacob, basically, obey me as your mother and go do this.
Okay.
So it just makes it even a stronger feeling that I have, like
Mhm.
that she was so intentional
Assertive.
and also used her authority.
Okay. Well, that's where I would push back on you.
Okay.
So I think the point I want to make before I say what I think here is just a reminder to everybody. This is where it is so important
To understand context.
to understand. Christy knows what I was going to say because I say it all the time. And as we're reading the Bible, if you're not if you're not digging into the context of what's being said, you can easily be misappropriating scripture. And what we're doing, and we all do it. I'm trying to do better lately. I'm trying to be super intentional about fixing this in my mind. But and this is not an attack on you, but
Yeah,
because we all
it's
do it.
fine.
We
Everything's fine.
we all do it. But what happens is so many people read the Bible in English and often forget the privilege that we have the scriptures in our language and maybe in a modern translation make it simple. And they forget that's not how it was written. And it's just like, oh, are we going to go into the ancient Hebrew? No, we don't even need to in this case. All you do need to do is recognize that when you're reading the story, be careful not to superimpose our culture
Hmm.
onto what's happening in a culture that was very, very different. So, with that in mind, going to that story, what's the glaring, massive cultural difference between that time and now? Is the role of a woman, right? That's couldn't be more different back then, right? Because on Sunday that church we go to, the sermon was about story of Ruth and Naomi, right? And so what's interesting if you study that story, it's just this is why it pops in my head. That story illustrates so blaringly clear. I remember I was writing notes as I was listening to the sermon and how women were property.
Mm.
So Ruth was, the daughter-in-law of Naomi, and both Ruth and her sister-in-law, their husbands died.
Mm.
And the way the language is written, if you read about it, they're talking about property. They're property. Like, what are you going to do with this property? Because women, that's how they were treated back then. The reason why that's so important to recognize, and it's even important in this case, because even Ruth, who was just a widowed daughter-in-law of Naomi, even Naomi is a widow now. And, she has all this struggle with the cultural, her placement in the world. So if you go back with that understanding to your story, Rebecca, again, her standing, she is a person in a culture where her words really don't matter that much. So she's asserting, listen to my authority. No such thing. You're talking about the boys, the inheritance, the image bearers, if you will, the lineage. And for their mother to try to usurp authority over them was, she was trying to create some authority, but she didn't have that authority because women's place in that time,
Over their children.
even over their children, if you study.
The word, it was King James Version that I was reading,
Mhm,
and the word was obey me.
yeah. Well, she was asking them to obey them.
It felt like she was telling them. Either way. So you don't think that
I'm not saying that they have.
as a mother, she didn't even have a say as a
I
mother?
wouldn't say that she have a say.
Well, he listened to her,
It's just
so there
not
was
'cause
something to say about that because
he chose
he
to
did what she
listen.
told him to do.
He chose to listen to what she said.
Yeah, and
The other story that comes to my mind is, the story of the garden, the fall of man, Adam and Eve, right? A lot of people are like, oh, Eve was the one, and Adam even tried to pull that, right? But ultimately, God held Adam accountable because in that time, in that age, it was his choice. And, um, Jacob and Esau, right? They're, image bearers. They're the lineage of their father. It was his choice to listen. She put it out there, sure, but life is going to always put things out there for you to do that are wrong.
I'm just saying
I
that,
know,
like,
I know, I know what you're
I
saying.
feel like I've thought ill, kind
Yeah,
of Esau,
yeah,
and I feel like Rebecca probably played I feel like she added actually, conflict in their family.
yeah. I'm not saying what she did was right, but, she may have observed, maybe he was small and constantly overlooked. Obviously, he was, right?
Mm,
Jacob was the heel grabber, right? So, um,
I don't know.
from a mother's perspective, favorites and all that, we don't know the dynamic there. It's not included in the story. It would take too much to write it and, articulate it. But, ultimately, I don't know. I go back to it was his decision. He did it.
Jacob's decision.
Yeah, he did it.
The other thing that caught me kinda funny was, she told Jacob to go and take a goat skin
Mhm.
and put it on the back of his neck
In his arms.
and on his hands and
Yeah.
arms. And so, how hairy must have Esau really
He
been?
was a beast.
I mean, he must have been really hairy to have, like, goat skin placed on him. How hairy. I mean, that seems so interesting to me too. How does that happen? I don't know, but it does say that, like Isaac felt his hand and he said, "You have the voice of Jacob, but you have the skin of Esau."
Yeah. I think it was also just very weathered probably. So it might have been a tanned hide or something like that. Who knows how.
I don't know. It was just like the idea. She told him exactly what to do, where to put it.
Yeah.
Like she was
She was snake.
something, something, something. I mean, I don't want to say a snake, but just what is that about?
No.
Yeah.
The willingness of people to bend the rules when it represents to, pursue their own agenda. It I can tell you from my life, I've observed people that are willing to do some shady and some questionable things just to get what they want, to pursue their agenda. And even if, they may think their agenda is pure and noble, but then their methods are impure and not noble, not noble. And to me, like that, you may have the purest motives and the purest, goal in mind, but if you're not doing it the right way, you've invalidated that, right? It's useless. Thinking of, the scripture, if you can't do it in love, right? If you can't give with a cheerful heart, don't give at all, right? So it's the same thing. So maybe she had a pure motive, but she was willing to use deception, which is clearly wrong, right?
Lying. And then,
Yeah.
and Jacob, I counted this. I have a problem with lying.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with lying. I don't lie.
Christie's a perpetual.
Habitual liar. No, if somebody lies to me, I'm like,
You have a really hard time with people
I
lying.
don't want to be done with them, but I'm like done with them. That's like kind of like that. You lie to me, I'm done with you. I don't have to, which is hard, which is not loving. And pray for me because I need to be better with that. But I was reading the story and Jacob lied 3 times.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't use so the message
So
there to
like
me.
Rebecca like does this and Jacob listens and then he has to lie himself into this blessing. And then what was so weird to me too is like Esau's like, "Do you not have more than one blessing? Like, why can't you bless me too?" And so that's an interesting thing too that, I need to do a little more research in.
Yeah.
Are you reading about it?
It's just double checking. Yeah. Make it,
Did I get it wrong?
no, no, you got it right. I always in my mind, but Esau, the older brother, why was Jacob as the younger brother? Why did he even feel entitled to the blessing? So again,
Well, but
culture,
okay, so did how what role did Rebecca play in planting that seed
right? But
in
just
his entitlement?
understand like the culture of that time, right? The blessing doesn't mean it's not the same thing. It's like saying, oh, like these days, it's ridiculous to think like you're going to bless all your kids, right? And even in most cases, let's say you leave a significant estate, you've got $1 million, you die with $1 million, you write a will, you got two kids. Most people are going to give 500,000 to each kid, right? Distribute it. I don't think again, going back to culture, back then, it was y your possession, because it wasn't a currency-based economy, right? So their possessions would have been livestock and property and stuff like that. So Esau, being the older brother, would have been entrusted with all that he would have been, um, the steward of that.
Like the estate.
And it would part of that would have been his responsibility to Jacob to take care of him as part of that. It's not like he cuts him out, "You're on your own, go." No, it's just that Esau would have been blessed. He'd get the blessing as the head of the family now. You're now the patriarch of the family, which means now you gotta take care of everybody. So, this is almost more of a power play than a monetary and possession play, right?
So what benefit did Rebecca have in Jacob receiving that?
I don't know. Maybe she had a better relationship with him, right? Maybe Esau was closer to his dad, and it was simple as Jacob's. We don't know, but I just think it is important to know again context there. The blessing, it's not like he gets all the money and nobody gets anything else. No, it
Mhm.
just makes him the patriarch, right? When uh, inheritance is given, um, Esau would have been now head of the family. That's all. And the fact that Rebecca, somehow wanted Jacob to jump over him. That's interesting in itself. But,
Yeah.
you know,
So, all right. Well, you do your stuff there, Bucko.
thanks for the quiz. Yeah, good stuff. All right, so listen, we're gonna cut it off here because my back is killing me, and I'm
Mm.
gonna go try to stretch it out a little bit. Thank you everybody for listening. A little different this week. Let us know what you like, what you didn't like about this. A little bit all over the place, but just trying to catch up. And we'll catch you next week. Any closing comments, Christy?
No, I think we've really talked about everything from exercise to the inauguration to Rebecca.
We left out one topic, but I think it's going to be its own podcast episode 'cause I think it's a good one. But you'll have
Hmm.
to tune in next time. Thanks, guys.